Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts, where our experts will answer your questions. I'm Brad White, and with me today is Dr. Philip Lancaster, beef nutritionist here at Kansas State. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Brad.
And Dr. Brian Lubers, who does food animal therapeutics here at Kansas State. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brad.
On BCI Ask the Experts, we find the right experts to answer your beef production questions. If you'd like to ask us a question, you can send us an email at bci@ksu.edu with Ask the Experts in the subject line. Our format is I'll ask each expert the same listener question, and they have a chance to provide input and respond to each other's comments. Based on their response, they'll receive points with a maximum of 10 points available. So let's get started with today's question. This question from a listener is, I've heard about fence line weaning, and I'm thinking about trying it. What is the best option? Barbed wire, electric, or high tensile? Brian, you want to go first?
Sure. And I think we talked about fence line weaning on a podcast recently, and I think you made a really good point. The calves are going to get through it, and it really doesn't matter what kind of fence you have. So I will say it depends, and I know I'm going to lose points for that answer, but I'd rather have the listeners get the right answer. I think the type of fence depends on what your situation is. If you are wanting to move the cows to a different pasture, and we're talking about a mile of fence, or if we're going to do something that's more of a temporary, just to wean, put the calves in a small lot where we're talking about maybe a few hundred yards of fence, I think the answer might be different. My preference is barbed wire.
Excellent. So even after the it depends, he came back with a barbed wire answer. So we'll give Brian 7 points. Philip, it's on you.
Well, I'm going to go with the combination. If we really want to try to keep those calves separate, I think a woven wire fence is a good way to go, and then maybe a single strand of electric wire on the inside to keep them from rubbing on the fence and pushing on the fence. And I think that will probably give you the best chance of not having any calves get through it other than, a solid wall. So I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay, excellent. So a woven wire with electric inside it. So now I'm going to ask a follow-up question. And Philip gave a good answer too, but Brian, even with your it depends, I'm going to have you have the lead here. Philip's got 6 points. So your follow-up question is, if that's the fencing opportunity for the calves there, what do I do to make sure or make it easy to keep the cows away from those calves?
I would say moving feed and water sources away from the fence line is a good way. If you don't give the cows a reason to hang around, and they will for probably 24 to 36 hours, they'll want to be with the calves, but eventually they'll kind of wander off. And if you don't give them a reason to stay, they'll go out and they'll wander off, and that's my answer. So keep the feed and water sources away from the fence line.
Excellent. Philip?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Brian, but I think at the very beginning you don't want to pull them away. The whole point is to have a gradual separation process. And if you're really pulling them away and they're not up there with the calves are going to walk and bawl more, and that's not reducing the stress level on those calves. So we want to have feed and water away from the fence, but not necessarily 2 miles away from the fence, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So you're gradually moving them away. And I think both of you came up with great options for all of them have high visibility through those fences. So solid fences aren't great for fence line weaning because you still get that visual contact with the calves. And then they start gradually moving away. Outside of fencing, any tips for fence line weaning, Brian?
Philip gave a great answer, though. I think, you want it to be a separation, but you want it to be a gradual process. And I think that's the key. No, not other than that, really don't. I mean, that's the big key.
I'll go from a nutrition standpoint that we want to gradually introduce them to feeds as well during that process. So give them something they're familiar with to begin with, like grass hay, and then slowly introduce new feeds on top of that grass hay so that that transition is gradual as well.
Excellent point. So it's not just the social that we're managing with this fence line weaning. One of the other advantages, we're not putting them in a dry lot. They're still familiar with grass, and then we can bring them up on other feed. So Really good comeback by Philip there. Surpassed Brian. Ended up with 9 points based on that last answer and the one you couldn't answer, Brian. So thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate you sending in questions. If you'd like to hear more from our BCI experts, you can join us on the weekly BCI Cattle Chat podcast. And remember, to get your question answered, send us an email at bci@ksu.edu with BCI Ask the Experts in the subject line.